7 spine-chilling instances of sinister strangers, hidden in the walls, unveiled horrors await. In Riverside Grove, the shadows stretched long and deep, lurking just outside the knowledge of its friendly residents. Jenna, a single mother, felt the weight of isolation, a horrible knot in her stomach that unfurled with every creak and whisper in her modest home. The soft hum of children's laughter and the veneer of safety stood in stark contrast to the dread gnawing at her heart. One evening, while reading Emily and Max their bedtime stories, Jenna heard it. Faint whispers. At first, she shook it off, blaming exhaustion, but the hairs on her arms prickled in response. Just then, Max crashed through her door, his wide eyes glistening with terror. "Mommy, there's a scary man outside my door." Her world tilted, fear surging through her veins. How could they be safe when even her children sensed danger? Emily, eyes filled with panic, recounted a chilling memory of being brushed against by someone in the dark. It felt like a venomous chill seeped into their sanctuary. Each night turned eerie, steeped in unsettling occurrences that congealed fear within their walls. Her favorite mug shattered without cause, echoing like a gunshot through the silence, and shadows danced menacingly around corners in her vision. Days passed, and now her neighbors, once so eager to chat, shuffled past her gaze like ghastly specters. Vanessa from across the street, a once cheery presence, disappeared altogether, and Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was creeping through the cracks of their tight-knit neighborhood. Jenna felt trapped, distrusting the comforting images of suburban life that now mocked her. When she turned to the police, they dismissed her fears, their condescension echoing in her ears. Each dismissive glance from the neighbors, once a sanctuary, now served as a daily reminder of her growing paranoia. That night, as the darkness draped their home with palpable menace, the whispers swelled into a murmur, a cacophony that sent a shiver down Jenna's spine. She stood frozen, clutching her children close to her. The basis of their security felt so flimsy now, and the dread clawed at her resolve. She had never believed in ghost stories or lurking dangers, but something was amiss. It loomed just beyond the surface of every warm smile, waiting. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a heavy heart, Jenna pushed aside her doubts and ventured out, driven by the fierce instinct to protect her children. The streets, once familiar, now seemed alien and broken. A shadow flickered through the streetlight, a neighbor she thought she knew but had never truly met. She learned to listen for whispers of truths that threaded through their silence, and every unveiled secret chipped farther away at the thin veil of security she clung to. Then, grappling with her fear that reached a fever pitch, Jenna followed the chilling whispers one night. Her heart pounded. It led her to the basement door, ominously ajar, inviting her dread to step forward. Shadows swirled around her as she edged closer, every fiber of her being screaming to flee, yet she felt the relentless tug of purpose. Gripping the cold doorknob, her thoughts spiraled wildly. What lay beyond? Summoning every ounce of courage, she turned the knob, the door creaking open to unleash a gut-wrenching darkness. Then the whispers rose and shrieked into a storm of sound, and before she could scream, icy fingers seized her wrist. The truth slithered out of the shadows, waiting to tear her world apart. What lurked inside would unmask the ugly reality hidden within Riverside Grove's seemingly perfect facade. The coldness engulfed Jenna as she was pulled into the suffocating black. Her heart raced like a trapped animal, wild and frantic. Panic threatened to swallow her whole as she struggled against the unseen force that gripped her wrist. The icy fingers felt like death itself, a reminder of her darkest fears. She opened her mouth to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive silence that surrounded her and a sudden surge of adrenaline. She twisted her arm free and stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the threshold. She glanced back into the depths of the basement, her breath coming in desperate gasps. The whispers faded, replaced by a chilling silence that sent fresh waves of fear coursing through her. What had she just encountered? And, more importantly, what had she awakened? "Mommy?" Max's voice echoed from the darkness above, snapping Jenna from her frenzied thoughts. "I'm coming," she called, her voice steadying against the rising tide of fear. She hesitated, casting a last glance over her shoulder, but the darkness consumed everything. A shadow flickered in the corner of her sight, barely perceptible, like a black ink stain bleeding into the walls of her mind. Swallowing her terror, she hurried up the stairs as she reached the living room. Jenna found Emily huddled on the couch, her small frame trembling. Max was standing close, his bewildered eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and concern. She gathered both of them in her arms, holding them tightly, her heart racing with unanswered questions. "Did you hear that?" Emily whispered, her voice quaking. "It sounds like someone is watching us." Jenna's throat tightened as the weight of dread pressed down on her chest. The neighbors had been strange for days, but tonight they felt particularly haunting. With each creak of the floorboards beneath her, each rustle of the curtains, the sense of being watched sharpened. She felt it more than ever, a prying gaze burrowing into the back of her neck. "Let us get some lights on," she said, forcing a semblance of calmness. She shuffled the kids toward the kitchen, flicking switches as they moved, chasing the shadows that flitted at the edges of their reality. Then came the faintest sound, a whisper, a crackling, weeping echo that slithered through the air like smoke. Jenna's heart skipped, and she froze, turning to her children, the terror reflected in their wide eyes. "Did you hear that?" They nodded silently, frozen in place, their tiny bodies flush against hers. The whispers intensified, now morphing into muffled cries, wails that echoed like ghosts trapped in the walls. The walls themselves shuddered, trembling like they held dark secrets close. In that visceral quiet, the doorbell rang with a single, jarring chime, sending shockwaves through their already fractured instincts. They exchanged terrified glances, the unspoken question hanging heavy in the air: who could possibly be visiting at this hour? Jenna's resolve steeled, though every instinct told her to ignore it. Slowly, she approached the front door, each step measured and heavy. The whispers taunted her, swirling around her in a suffocating cocoon. With a tentative hand, she reached for the doorknob, feeling the chill radiate through the metal. "Who's there?" she called, her voice nearly breaking. Silence. And then, the whisper came, clear as day, chilling her blood. "Let us in." Before Jenna could react, the whispers erupted into a frenzied chorus, rising to a crescendo that felt like thundering footsteps in her head. Terror clawed up her throat, but desperation pushed her forward. What had she unleashed in Riverside Grove, and who were those that waited just beyond her door? As the shadows lengthened around her, she knew this was only the beginning. Her fight for survival had just begun. The door trembled beneath her hand, every instinct screaming at her to retreat. Jenna's breath hitched as the whispers grew feral, winding around her like a living thing, their urgency rising to a fevered pitch. She could almost feel the icy fingers again, creeping up her spine. "Mommy?" Max's shaky voice pierced through the chaos, breaking her momentary paralysis. Jenna shot a glance back, the glow from the kitchen lights illuminating their terrified faces. "Stay here," she barked, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Don't move, no matter what." With her heart hammering in her chest, Jenna turned the knob, her knuckles white against the cold metal. Every muscle in her body twitched, urging her to bolt. But curiosity and fear kept her rooted in place. What awaited her beyond the door? The whispers morphed into an unsettling harmony, as if the very walls were breathing in rhythm with dread. The door creaked open, a long and tortured sound that echoed through the silence. Outside loomed the dark porch, a void stretching into the blackness and heavy humidity of the night. She squinted, searching for a face, a clue, anything. "Hello?" she called, her voice wavering, swallowed up by the consuming darkness. And then, a figure stepped forward, silhouetted against the night, a tall man in a dark coat, his face obscured by shadows. He speak. Instead, he lifted a hand slowly, pointing directly at her. Jenna's breath caught in her throat. A rush of cold swept over her, chilling her to the bone. "Who are you?" she demanded, every ounce of bravery in her quavering voice, as if sheer will could protect her. He took another step, and the whispers flared around her like a wild storm. Panic surged, intertwining with confusion. "Mommy!" Max shouted, his voice pouring out raw fear. They were closer, the two of them now, Emily's tiny hands clutching at her shirt. "Go inside," Jenna barked, not taking her eyes off the figure. But her command faltered as the man began to move closer, his actions almost gliding, too smooth and unnatural for a living being. "What do you want?" He stepped closer, and for the briefest moment, she thought she could make out words at the edge of her hearing. Something about children. Her stomach twisted. Instinctively, she shifted, blocking her children from view. "Let USIN," the chorus erupted again, sounding almost like a howl wound through the air. It reverberated off the walls and into her bones, sending a shudder through her entire being. "Enough!" she shouted, slamming the door shut, the heavy thud resonating like a heartbeat. She turned to the kids, their faces pale and wide-eyed, uncertainty reflected in their gaze. "We have to get to the basement," she said, her voice shaking. "Now, what about the door?" Emily whimpered, peering nervously over her shoulder. There wasn't time to explain. She needed to make a plan, fast. Jenna snagged her phone, the screen lighting her frantic face. But when she glanced up, she froze. The shadows in the corner of the room, a dark wavy entity, began to shift, pulsing as if alive. Eyeballs, bright and staring, blinked open. "Scream, and we'll tear that door to shreds," the voice dripped with malice. It wasn't the man from outside. Something else had found its way inside. Jenna's pulse raced as frozen fear swelled in her chest. "We have to move." She grabbed her kids and sprinted toward the back of the house. But fingers of night began to slither down the hall toward them, chasing after the faint light. With every rush of footsteps, the shadows undulated and morphed. Hungry for what they had never possessed, she reached the basement door. Jenna locked it behind them, panting. The whispering intensified, a tempest swirling like a haunted chant, clawing at her sanity. And then, amidst the chaos, the chilling thought struck her: this wasn't just a haunting. They were being hunted. But hunted by who or what? The truth was dark, and she knew she had to uncover it before it was too late. The basement was damp and suffocating, the air thick with despair. Jenna shoved a wooden box against the door, her heart thundering in her chest. She turned to the kids, their faces ghostly pale, eyes darting around in panic. "Stay close," she whispered, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. Every instinct told her to bolt, to find a way out, but the only direction was down, deep into this suffocating darkness. "What was that?" Max asked, his small hands trembling as he clutched Emily's shoulder. "I don't know," she replied, feeling the weight of her words. They had to be safe, at least for a moment, far from prying eyes and menacing shadows. She flicked on her phone's flashlight, the weak beam cutting through the darkness like a flickering candle. Shadows stretched and twisted, dancing along the damp walls. Each creak of the old floorboards above sent a fresh wave of terror spiraling through her. The whispered chorus above had dwindled to a low murmur, but it was still there, lurking just beyond the door. The pounding of her heart drowned out all other sounds as her mind raced. What if they got in? What if that figure outside wasn't alone? "Mommy, I'm scared," Emily whimpered, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Me too," Jenna said, kneeling to level with her children. "But we need to be brave. We can't let them find us." The basement offered little comfort. The walls were damp and crumbling, evidence that someone or something had once made this refuge their own. Old boxes littered the floor, remnants of lives lived long ago, forgotten photos, yellowed letters, half-broken toys wrapped in cobwebs. Everything felt wrong. An echo of loss lingered, only amplifying her unease. Then came a sound, a soft scrape against the basement door, more defined now. With each shuddering whisper, an invisible claw gripped her throat, tightening unbearably. Was it the man? She couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't coming alone. Please, please, be quiet, Jenna hissed, fear glistening in her eyes as the children instinctively pressed closer to her. Small bodies trembling in terror as the scrape turned into a low, grating laugh. Something flickered in her peripheral vision. She turned the flashlight to the side, illuminating the far corner where the shadows pooled heavily. At first, she thought it was just an old coat rack, but as the light danced across the shapes, it began to shift, lurching and reshaping like a living thing. What is that? Max gasped, clutching his sister tighter. Stay back, Jenna shouted as the silhouette unraveled, transforming into something grotesque, something she couldn't comprehend. It dripped, a viscous blackness pooling at the base that seemed to pulse with ancient longing. No longer obscured by her trembling light, a face emerged, horned, with eyes that burned like molten steel, staring hungrily at them. Why are you hiding? It hissed, each word dripping with malice, resonating in every cracked crevice of the basement. Jenna's blood froze in her veins. As adrenaline coursed through her, a desperate mantra echoed in her mind. Get out now. There was only one option left. She lunged toward the cluttered shelves, rifling through piles of debris. Max, Emily, help me, she shouted, tossing broken toys aside, searching frantically for something, anything, that could defend them against the horror creeping closer. Mommy, Max cried, eyes wide with terror. The creature moved, slithering across the floor, drawn to the light like a moth. Jenna's breath quickened, her fingers trembling like leaves in an autumn wind. She had to fight, but would fighting even matter? As the darkness closed in around them, suffocating and relentless, one thought terrorized her more than the rest. What if this was just the beginning? The whispers grew louder, rising to an unbearable crescendo, drowning out her thoughts. And then, amidst the chaos, "You will join us." A door creaked open above them, a sliver of light cutting through the dark, and hope flickered in her chest. But at what price? The basement erupted into a cacophony of sound as Jenna knew they needed to be ready for anything. But who, the man outside or the creature in front, would come for them first? Fear clawed at her, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just a matter of survival. It was a battle for their very souls. Jenna's heart raced, pounding louder than the whispers that swirled around them. The sliver of light above cracked the darkness, a beacon of false hope tainted with dread. She could feel the hungry gaze of the creature, its molten eyes boring into her, searching for a weakness, a chink in her armor. Mommy, what is it? Emily trembled, her small voice barely rising above the rising tension. Jenna swallowed hard, her throat dry as she forced herself to look away from the beast. They had to focus. Despite the chaos, they couldn't crumble. We can't let it scare us. We're stronger together, she croaked, feeling the kid's fear wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. The scraping from the door rang out again, more frantic than before. Jenna's throat tightened. That sound couldn't belong to just one person. Whoever was outside wasn't going to let them go easily. Max, she commanded, find something heavy. Her voice cut through the thick air like a knife, and she turned back to the creature. Its grotesque form shimmered, alive with malevolence, as it mocked their courage with jerky, exaggerated movements. With trembling hands, Max began shuffling through the debris, knocking over boxes, sending dust clouds swirling around them. Mommy, there's nothing, he squeaked, panic lacing every syllable. Keep looking. We need to buy time, Jenna shouted, not fully believing her own words. What could they possibly find to fight that abomination? The creature coiled closer, its form undulating like a dark mist. Bravery is so futile it could. Join us. We never leave. The words hissed and broke, echoing in Jenna's head, a chant with the promise of despair. It's trying to play mind games, she yelled back, her own resolve flickering. Her fingers grazed the surface of a rusted pipe protruding from a nearby crate. It was heavy. It was their chance. To her left, Emily grabbed a dust-covered flashlight, flicking it on. The beams struggled against the dark, revealing shapes that had long been forgotten, moths fluttering in the disturbance, old clothes, and a looming, large shadow at the edge of the room. Jenna's breath hitched. It's not just the creature, there's something else. Suddenly, a loud thump resonated from above, followed by a frantic voice. "Jenna, are you down there?" It was the familiar beat of her husband's voice, breaking through the mounting horror. "Mark." Jenna's heart leaped, felt like salvation, but then dread seeped in. What if the creature had allies among the living? What if Mark wasn't alone up there? The basement door vibrated with another impact, sending shudders through the floor. The heavy box Jenna had pushed against it groaned under pressure. "Mommy, it's okay. Hold on tight." Her grip tightened around the pipe. She could hear whispering, a chorus of voices melding into one. Let us in, but what if Mark was already compromised? The thought sent icy tendrils crawling over her skin. Could she trust him? "Mark, get back. Don't come in," she shouted, panic-infused adrenaline coursing through her veins. The laughter of the creature echoed off the basement walls, drowning out any pleas for help. Shadows flicked, creeping around Jenna's feet, wrapping around her like chains. Max shrank closer to Jenna, burying his face against her leg. "What do we do, Mommy? What if he lets it in?" Jenna's mind raced. "We need to stay hidden. We need to be ready," but even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her insides, taunting her about who would come to rescue them and who was really after them. The door shook violently one last time, and then the reverberations faded. Silence filled the room, eerie and heavy. Jenna's breath caught in her throat as she whispered, "What happened?" "Mommy," Emily whimpered, her small hand seeking Jenna's. Their coming daylight glared down through the cracks as the basement felt more alive, the darkness whispering like it was listening. Jenna straightened, shaky but defiant. She had to make a choice. "Stand behind me. Stay close," Jenna commanded. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come, and as she stood with her back against the wall, one thing was certain. They weren't alone. Who or what had just slipped inside? The silence became unbearable, every shadow in the room now blurring into a sinister form. As Jenna prepared to confront the darkness, the realization washed over her: this was a fight for everything they had left. Would they escape, or would the shadows consume them all? The energy in the room shifted, the hairs on the back of Jenna's neck standing on end. Every creak of the floorboards echoed like thunder, and she felt the temperature drop, a sinister chill creeping over her exposed skin. She could sense something moving beyond the thin barrier of the door. An awareness, like the breath of a predator, filled the space, and she fought the impulse to look away. "Mommy, I'm scared." Emily's voice trembled, the fear palpable in the stillness. "Shoo, it's okay." Jenna forced a calm she didn't feel. If she broke, they would all break. She squeezed the pipe tighter, knuckles white as she steadied herself. The faint beam from Emily's flashlight flickered, casting frantic shadows that danced on the walls like deranged specters. From the corner, the creature whispered, a seductive low murmur. "You can't hide from us, we're always waiting. We're always here." The words wrapped around her like smoke, suffocating her will. "Max, keep looking," she snapped, the urgency in her voice staunching her doubt. He continued rummaging, tears of frustration glistening in his eyes as he threw aside broken toys and dust-covered relics. Suddenly, the basement door trembled again. A series of desperate knocks reverberated through the wood. Jenna's heart dropped into her stomach. The presence above wasn't done with them. Were the voices from inside the house now outside? The growing urgency felt wrong, filled with a calculated malice. "Mark," she yelled, dread pooling within her. "Get back. You have to let us handle this." Another thump crashed down from the door, splinters cascading to the floor. The darkness thickened, shadows pooling into a form just beyond the doorframe. A monstrous silhouette that stirred and twisted with a life of its own. Jenna's heart felt like it might burst. This couldn't be happening. What if it's him? What if it's not him? Max whimpered while trembling against her leg. Stay behind me." Her command was fierce, but the uncertainty tore at her heart. In that moment of hesitation, a ghastly wail erupted from outside, filled with anguish. Jenna! The voice distorted, slipping from Mark's lips into something dark, something twisted. It echoed in her mind like a taunt. "Let me in, I need you, please." Jenna's breath quickened, panic clawing at her throat. Was it truly him? Or a poor imitation striving to worm its way in? The creature in the room began to laugh, a cruel, cracking sound that made her feel hollow. "He wants you to let him in, and then you will never leave." Her grip around the pipe faltered momentarily. Was she truly ready to lose everything? Tears welled in her eyes, blurring her vision. The shadows began to pulse, slithering toward the edge of the door, inching forward with a life of their own. Then she saw it, an image in the midst of the darkness. A claw reaching out, long and crooked, glistening with an unnatural sheen. It was the horror she had underestimated. The reason for all the whispering, with urgency coursing through her veins. Jenna yelled, "Max! Emily! Back!" With a swift yank, she dragged Max behind her and crouched low, the pipe poised like a sword. She felt both fear and resolve charging through her. "Go away, all of you!" she screamed, summoning every ounce of fierce love she had for her children. The wail outside morphed into laughter, the two sounds echoing in a dark harmony. She gritted her teeth, preparing for the fight of her life, as the door shook violently, a sickening creak splitting the stillness. Then, a final pounding blow shattered the heavy silence. The door splintered with a sickening crack that reverberated through the basement, sending dust raining down like confetti. Was this it? Would this be the moment it all unraveled? And in that instant, Jenna's mind raced for a solution. Was there a hidden escape she hadn't thought of? In the crushing tension, as shadows draped over them like a shroud, Jenna was left with one last terrifying question: would they find freedom or become part of the darkness forever? The door crashed open, splintering wood flying in multiple directions. The sound was like a gunshot, echoing in the small basement, sending a jolt through Jenna's body. Her heart raced as she stood protectively in front of Max and Emily, the fading light from the flashlight flickering wildly as if pulsating with their fear. The creature leaped through the doorway, a writhing mass of shadows and chaotic movements. Jenna couldn't fully comprehend its form. It was like staring into a nightmare made flesh, a tapestry of fears sewn together. Its eyes gleamed, pale and malevolent, pulling her gaze as though a magnet had latched onto her soul. "Mommy!" Emily cried, her small voice cracking as she clung to Jenna's robe. "No! Stay behind me!" Jenna shouted, adrenaline surging as she swung the pipe to create distance. The shivering echo ricocheted off the walls, drowned only by the guttural, mocking laughter emanating from the shadows. "Do you really think you can protect them?" The creature slithered closer, its tone a grating whisper that clawed at the edges of her mind. "They belong to us now." Jenna shook her head violently, casting aside its words. "Get away!" she screamed, thrusting the pipe toward the darkness, as if her resolve could push it back. But a clawed hand shot out, slicing through the air with unnatural speed, narrowly missing her. She stumbled back, a gasp caught in her throat. Max's face twisted in horror, tears spilling down as he clutched Emily tightly. "What is it?" he whimpered. "What do we do? Just trust me." Jenna's voice cracked with desperation. The shadows pulsated, an unspeaking force beckoning them deeper into despair. There had to be a way out, but nothing came to mind, only the instincts of a mother barking against overwhelming terror. "Leave them." Mark's voice surged from behind the chaos, pulling at Jenna's heart. "You have to let me in," he pleaded, genuine panic mixing with the distorted mockery of the creature. In that moment, Jenna's defenses began to crumble. Mark's voice, a sound she thought she'd lost, wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Could she believe him? Was it really him pushing against the confines of whatever darkness held him captive? But then, the creature twisted again, projecting its sickening laughter. "You think you can choose what is real? I am the truth, and I will take them." Jenna felt a cold rush of dread as shadows began to envelop Emily and Max, their forms wavering like static on a broken screen. Her stomach twisted. Their fate lay inches from a nightmare. "No, no," she screamed, pulling the children away, trying to shield them from the creeping grasp. "You're not taking them." Suddenly, as if the creature had been interrupted mid-movement, the shadows retreated just slightly, revealing a flicker of brightness from behind. A ray of light punctured the layers of darkness for a heartbeat, glimmering into existence like a distant promise. Jenna seized that moment. "Run!" she screamed, barely able to voice the command through the clutching fear. She didn't know where it led, but she grasped Max's hand, dragging Emily along as they fled towards the sliver of light. The specter screamed in rage, a blood-curdling sound erupting from its throat, causing Jenna to flinch as she pushed forward, praying they weren't sprinting towards their doom. Panting heavily, they stumbled closer, the light growing but pulsating eerily like a heartbeat. As Jenna grasped for more clarity, the creature lunged after them, clawed limbs reaching, filled with hatred and malice. Jenna could feel the dark presence hot on their heels, a stench of decay and death. "Faster!" she urged, fear clawing at her lungs. Just as hope shimmered, a metallic clang pierced the air. The door behind them slammed shut with a tremendous boom, trapping whatever horror lay within it, but blocking their escape. Jenna's breath hitched as she turned back to see the outline of the creature bearing down on them, shadowy tendrils swirling around the edges. Failure was not an option. She held on to that thread of light, it was their only chance. Panicked eyes darted over her surroundings, searching for an escape route. The walls seemed to pulse. She could feel the house breathing around her, urging them to stay, to surrender. But as she took a deep breath, something far worse than she imagined lingered. What if the light was just another trap? What if we go straight into the dark? Jenna whispered just as uncertainty clawed at her. The children were still clinging to her, pressing closer as the world around them swirled with terror ahead. In the depth of those heavy shadows, a path twisted beyond what her heart could bear. But the choice loomed like a clock ticking down the light or the dark. Only time would tell if the next step would save them or send them spiraling deeper into despair. What awaited them on the other side? Jenna's heart thundered like a war drum as she held onto Max and Emily, their grip tightening on her arms. She cast a glance back at the writhing creature, already merging with the shadows and inching closer. A dark claw reached out, tiptoeing at the edges of their world, bringing with it the promise of nightmares. The sliver of light ahead shimmered invitingly, but was it real? What if we go into the light? Jenna spoke more to herself than to the kids, desperation clawing at her throat. Emily's face was a mask of fear, and Max's wide eyes searched his mother's, silently pleading for reassurance. "Please, Mommy, we can't stay here," Emily whimpered, her voice breaking like glass. Okay, Jenna breathed out, wrapping her free arm protectively around Emily. "Just hold on tight." She propelled them forward, their feet rushing over the dusty floor, shouting echoes dancing along the walls. Closer and closer they came, the light throbbing like a heartbeat against her palm, a promise, perhaps. But around them, ominous whispers entwined with the fabric of shadows. "Where do you think you're going?" The creature's voice slithered into their minds, tauntingly soft, each word dipped in syrupy malice. "You can't escape me. You are already mine." Jenna stumbled. It felt as though the air thrummed with dread, alive and aware. Shadows grazed her ankles like cold fingers, the walls of the basement closing in. But the light ahead shimmered brighter, cruelly full of hope that tasted bitter against her tongue. "Stay close," she shouted, panic thickening in her voice. They pushed toward the light with every ounce of strength and will, but Jenna felt the serpent of despair constricting around her throat. If they could just reach it, what would they find? She dared to glance back one more time. The creature twisted, elongating its form, its mouth stretching into a grin that revealed jagged teeth gleaming like knives in the dark. "I can help you, I will show you the truth." "Mommy!" Max yelped as Jenna felt a rush of air swoop past them, dark and savage, the creature's presence pressing against her like a vice. She could feel the children shivering, their small frames trembling as they clutched her. Not today, she yelled as she propelled them forward. But the shadows rushed, engulfing the doorway, creating a dark whirlpool, a funnel of chaos. We're getting out. They barreled into the light, breathless. The sudden brightness seared through Jenna's eyes, like standing under a blazing sun after being locked away for months. But the feeling of dread twisted in her stomach, and a chill crept down her spine. With each step, she sensed the menacing presence trailing them, the darkness trapped behind. The moment they broke through, Jenna stumbled into an empty room. Old wooden beams towered overhead. The walls glimmered, an unexpected elegance in the decor that felt wrong, eerily beautiful. It smelled of dust but hinted at something long past. "Where are we?" Max asked, his voice small in the void. "I don't know," Jenna said, dread pooling in her gut. The walls felt hostile, almost alive, watching and waiting. The air pulsed around them, thickening with anticipation. Was this another trap? No, Emily's voice trembled, and Jenna's heart sank as she followed her daughter's gaze. It fell upon a door, pale and inviting, with nothing to indicate harm. But Jenna felt a horrible weight in her chest. "Should we?" Max trembled. Both fear and curiosity etched on his face. "Do we have a choice?" Jenna flinched, recalling the shrieks and laughter that accompanied their flight. But just as the thought settled in her mind, the walls creaked like an old soul waking from slumber. A faint whisper unfurled through the air that sent a new wave of ice coursing through her veins. "Come to me." The door swung open slowly, revealing a darkness that felt thicker than anything they had faced before. It beckoned them into the unknown, the whispering shadows swirling just beyond the threshold. Jenna grasped the children tighter, feeling their rapid heartbeats match her own, caught between a choice. Hanging in the air. "Are you ready?" she breathed, feeling every ounce of fear boiling inside. As the whispers grew louder, weaving into a single horrifying question. Would they dare cross that threshold, leaving safety behind? Jenna took a deep breath, the air weighed down with a sour chill. Behind her, the shadows coiled like serpents, and the whispers seemed to seep into her bones, curling around her heart with each beat. Emily's grip on her tightened, while Max's small frame barely contained the tremors that swept through him. "Stay close, no matter what," Jenna whispered, her voice barely rising above the swirling darkness. With a nod from her children, she stepped forward, toeing the edge of the threshold. The door seemed alive, its darkness pulsating as if it had a heartbeat of its own. An unsettling energy radiated from it, pulling her dreams into nightmares, as daring thoughts clawed at her mind. What could be waiting on the other side? The moment they crossed into the darkened hallway, an icy wind surged past them, and the door slammed shut with a deafening thud. Jenna whipped around but was met with solid wood, cold and impenetrable. Panic flickered in her chest. "It's okay," she tried to assure herself. "We'll find a way out." The narrow passage twisted before them like a gnarled tree branch, the air growing thicker, heavier. Distant echoes resounded, mingling with the haunting whispers that lured her deeper into the gloom. Jenna's heart raced. The darkness seemed to pulse, teasing them with its terrible unknown. "Can we turn back?" Emily's voice quaked, turning Jenna's insides to ice. "No, we can't," Jenna replied, forcing courage into her tone. It was more for her than for the children. "We'll find a way through." Ahead, something moved, a flicker of movement just out of reach. Jenna squinted into the murkiness, her pulse quickening, and grabbed the kids' hands even tighter. "Stay close," she repeated, as if the words could ward off the lurking horrors within. They inched forward, Jenna's footsteps reverberating against the unforgiving floor. Each creak sent echoes ricocheting off the distant walls, which seemed to lean in closer with every step they took, closing in like a terrible embrace. Then a sharp clatter rang out. It sounded like something heavy had been knocked over. Horrified, Jenna froze. "Did you hear that?" Max nodded, his eyes round as saucers, and Emily pressed her face against Jenna's side. The whispers swelled, a cacophony of voices murmuring in a language she couldn't understand. "Run." At that moment, the fear exploded inside her, and they bolted deeper into the passage, shadows chasing them like hungry wolves. Jenna whipped around as sounds of scuttling filled the space behind them. She could almost feel the creature, the darkness snapping at their heels, gnashing teeth closing in. They turned a corner, sliding to a stop in front of what looked like a massive metal door looming against the far wall. Deadbolts and chains hung loosely around it, rust marking its edges. Jenna pressed her ear against the cold surface, as though it could tell her secrets. "Mommy, open it," Max pleaded, his voice a desperate whisper. "I can't," she started, but something thumped heavily behind them, causing the kids to squeal in fear. Jenna twisted the handle, her breath hitching as the door creaked open reluctantly. She glanced into the room, darkness spilling out to greet them. It felt almost like a mouth opening wide, hungry and ready. She could sense something breathing, waiting, whether it was the children or the unseen dread. She wasn't sure. The tension felt almost tangible, walls vibrating with an uneasy rhythm. "Let us go," she urged, pulling the kids inside as the shadows lunged toward them. The door slammed shut behind them with a thundering boom. Nothing but darkness. But then Jenna realized it wasn't only darkness. Something moved within it, twisting shapes emerging slowly. Whispering shadows with glowing eyes stared back at them, their grins widening as Jenna felt the chill of the room creep into their bones. "Who's there?" she called out, the defiance in her voice laced with trembling fear. "Find us," a sinister voice whispered from the ether, as the shadows danced closer, lingering just beyond the reach of the flickering light, asking only one thing. "Join us." Jenna's mind raced. This wasn't merely a game. They were lost, hunting like prey, trapped in a nightmare worse than she could ever have imagined. "What do we do?" Max murmured, his eyes wide with fear. "Hold on tight," Jenna whispered, frozen between dread and the pulse of urgency burning inside her. "We need to find a way out. Fast." The shadows swirled, moving closer, their chilling laughter echoing in her ears. But the whispers grew louder, taunting her. "You'll never leave." And in that moment, Jenna realized the truth. They weren't just lost. They were drawn into a dark world that wanted them for something far more sinister than they could ever fathom. What had they stumbled into? What waited for them in this abyss? Jenna felt the pull of despair clutching at her heart, the shadows closing in like a vice grip around her and her children. The whispers grew louder, almost gleeful, as if they were savoring the moment. "Join us," they hissed, weaving through the air like a cold draft that chilled her bones. She glanced at Emily, fear shining in her daughter's eyes, and at Max, who was desperately clinging to her side. They needed a plan. "I want let them take you," she murmured, more to herself than to the kids. Jenna steadied her breath and looked around. The room felt vast yet suffocating, shadows clawing at the edges of her vision, whispering sweetly enough to lull anyone into compliance. But she was their mother. She had a duty to fight. "Quick, we need to find a way out," she urged, taking their hands tightly in hers and leading them deeper into the encroaching darkness. With every step, strange shapes coiled closer, taunting their resolve. She flicked her phone back on, the dim light scattering across the space, revealing more grotesque silhouettes that lurked behind her. "What if we're trapped forever?" Emily whimpered, her small voice trembling with quaking disbelief. "No," Jenna said fiercely, her voice ringing against the oppressive air. "We're going to be okay. We need to stick together and stay strong." As they pressed forward, the flickering flashlight illuminated a small chest wedged against the far wall. Jenna hesitated for just a moment, weighing the shadows around them, but a faint voice in her heart urged her on. It could be hope, a way to defend themselves, or perhaps even a path to escape the dark. "Help me," she whispered, as she knelt before the chest and pried it open. Inside lay an assortment of oddities. Old books, intricate symbols drawn on tattered pages, and strange trinkets that glinted in the paltry light. But there, among the clutter, lay a dull silver dagger. Even without knowing its history, it felt like a talisman against the darkness that threatened them. "Mommy, what is that?" Max's eyes widened as he looked at the weapon, confusion and uncertainty mixing in his fear. "It's something we need," Jenna replied as she grasped the dagger tightly, the cool handle grounding her. The shadows shrieked, enraged by the light illuminating the darkness, feeling the gathered energy that ignited something primal inside of her. "Let us go," she commanded, urgency pulsing through her veins. With the dagger in hand, they pushed deeper into the darkness, shadows swirling around them like a storm. Jenna clutched the children close to her, determination flooding her thoughts. The phantoms that whispered around her seemed to shriek in anger, the darkness raging against her newfound strength. And the truth is the monster cooed from behind, its voice curling like smoke. "You'll never know what really lies beyond until you join us," Jenna's heart thundered as she pressed the dagger tightly against her chest. "I know exactly what lies beyond," she shouted, her voice echoing with defiance. "It's nothing that can take my children from me." Suddenly, a gust of cold wind swept through the room, and shadows coiled like snakes, eager to sink their fangs into their prey. Jenna thrust the dagger out, the glimmering silver drawing the creatures back as they screamed in fury, swirls of dark wings flapping against the encroaching light. "Get back!" she yelled, a cry fueled by primal protectiveness that rang through her. They continued pushing forward into the swirling shadows of the unknown, and there, in the distance, an opening appeared, light bleeding through, beckoning them with warmth. Felt like real hope, waiting just ahead. "Keep going, faster," she urging the kids forward as they ran toward the exit. Shadows clawed at Jenna's coat, their icy fingertips pulling her back into despair. "Leave them, join us," the voices clamored amid the thrumming darkness, a haunting lament with a final surge of adrenaline. Jenna swung the dagger wildly around her as they charged ahead, terror morphing into fury as they neared the shimmering doorway. The shadows shrieked, angry ghosts pushing back against the light. As they crossed the line between shadow and illumination, the dark erupted behind them in a furious howl, but Jenna kept running until they reached the threshold. "Jenna!" Mark's voice broke through, frantic yet protective, and it slammed into her heart with an unexpected warmth. "Mark!" she cried out, her body trembling both with exhaustion and relief. Get them to safety." Mark reached through the light, his arms extending to grab Emily and Max, warmth enveloping them like a promise of safety wrapped in love. Jenna stood back, heart racing, ready to face whatever sinister horror remained behind her. She gripped the dagger with resolve. "You will not take us," she yelled, confronting the shadows now twisting toward her with renewed vengeance. "Don't leave," they wailed as all their darkness surged, but Jenna felt the fire ignite within her, a flame fueled by her unyielding love. "We'll never join you." With that, she hurled the dagger right into the darkness. It sliced through the shadows like a beam of light cutting through smoke. A deafening silence erupted before the shadows exploded into a raging, swirling tide. Darkness writhed and disintegrated into nothing. The haunted air shattered, releasing a surge of dread that transformed into light. Jenna staggered back as the shadows dissolved, engulfed in the bright warmth that surrounded her. "Mommy, come on," Max called, yanking her forward toward the safety of Mark's embrace. "Go," Jenna shouted, her strength nearly giving out, as she leaped forward, crossing the threshold and into their world of light, leaving the hollow emptiness behind with the last echo of ghostly whispers. A concave rental of nightmares now fading like a distant memory. She stumbled, catching onto Mark, eyes locking with his as the light enveloped them, cradling them in a sanctuary free from darkness. The weight of her struggles fell away, evaporating into the air around them. The screams, the shadows all melted away before the dawn of safety. With dawn's first golden light spilling through the windows, Jenna clutched her children close. They were safe together. "We did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face, tasting the bittersweet relief that brought long-awaited comfort to their battered hearts. And as they embraced tightly, she knew they would always stand against the darkness together, because love was the brightest light, unstoppable against the shadows that wanted to take them. Strengthened by her family, they could face whatever lay ahead, hand in hand, united against the ghosts waiting for their chance to return. But for now they breathed, they lived. They had conquered the darkness. If you enjoyed this gripping conclusion, you need to subscribe now. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and ensure you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this mind-bending ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is everything to us, and we want to keep bringing you these incredible tales.